we all have had something that has saved us multiple times in our lives. Something that has continuously presented itself in our times of need, whether that's a person, a symbol, or an animal. But we've had a certain savior come back into our lives a couple times to help us out. And if you don't know what exactly that is, dig deeper. There's always something. Fish have saved my life a couple of times. Not in the ways that you think, not physically. Although that sounds really cool. I wish it was a thing, because if I had a story where a fish saved my life physically, I would have to mention it every day to somebody. I'd be abnormally obsessed with retelling that story. And fish have saved my life multiple times metaphorically. And one of those times was when I was given a red betta fish for my birthday last year. This red betta, his name was Vale. And Vale, he literally showed me that I suck. I suck at adapting. And I honestly did. I moved to a new town. I was on my own for the first time. I was a bit lonely, or a lot lonely, and there was chaos in that feeling. I felt a bit chaotic. And I would stare at Vale all the time. I was obsessed with the fish. I was obsessed with him. He got to be submerged in water 24/7. I was a bit jealous, and I would always stare at him because I knew that he was gifted to me for a reason. I immediately started to do what I always do, and I asked the whys, and I theorized the timing that he came into my life. And I came up with that Vale was a master of transition, kind of like a guide for me through my transition. And the more he flashed his red tail with neon teal accents, that's what he looked like. That's exactly what he looked like. The more he swam, the more I noticed that even in my chaos, he carried on in his nature, which is swimming. So then I said, okay, in my chaos, I also need to get a grip of my innate courage, carry on within that nature, and be grounded in that. So Vale, he saved me in that way. He did. I was even gonna get him tatted. he meant a lot. I was gonna get him tatted, and I was gonna put him in. I have this scar from shaving really hard from like a year ago, and I was gonna put him there, but really weird instance happened because everything interconnects. He actually passed away 2 days ago. Vale passed away 2 days ago. He passed earlier this week, and he actually did when I was about to record this episode. And he has to do with this episode, and you're about to see why. But after I actually had planned this episode since July. I've been planning to do this episode since July. And the reason why I haven't released it is because I got so defensive of this location. I got into like protection mode because the location that is featured in this episode, I have gained so much love for it. And in that love, I was like, I can only talk about it if it's perfect, if I'm doing justice to it. But I was like, perfection doesn't exist, and something's got to be released. And this episode is dedicated to Vale. I'm releasing this episode because it is time, and we should talk about the things that we love and not be afraid to do so or justify it, because that love in itself is enough of a reason to even share something as beautiful. And what Vale has to do with all of this, what fish have to do with all of this. It's an interconnection. And this episode is about how everything is connected. And the place that we're going today is called Rabo de Peixe, which translates directly to fishtail. Fishtail from Portuguese to English. There you go. There's your fish interconnection. And Rabo de Peixe is a village in the island of São Miguel in the Azores archipelago. We'll get more into that and where that is and what it is if you haven't heard of it. But this place, this location, Rabo de Peixe, me researching it, it saved my life in a big way. It did. I'm telling you, fish have been saving my life multiple times. It was the first location that I became interested in that gave me the idea to start this podcast. And what I mean by that is that this location and everything that I learned from it, all the works, everything that I have pulled out, I started to really understand the idea of interconnection. My encounter with this location was my first understanding of how everything is connected and how that comes into everything I experience in itself and that people experience. Let me paint you a picture. Let me paint you a picture of how this happened. I'm sitting in my international studies class and I'm in my third year of university and I'm still confused. I'm like, why? What am I doing here? I love to learn. Gimme, but I don't know exactly what I'm doing here. I don't know. I want to know, but I know that I love to study the world and I love to study the authenticity of the human race and human nature. But I don't know exactly what. And then I came across this. And I was like, boom. I kept looking for an excuse to talk about this place, but I didn't need one. I was intrigued, and that was enough for me to dig deeper. And the more I did, the more I was like, this is what my podcast is going to be about. At first I accepted the connection. I accepted the connection as something I couldn't quite put my finger on. But overall, knew I felt a bond and that pieces would align later on. And so they did. And I became familiar with aspects of Rabo de Peixe. And mostly became familiar with these two separate random stories that appeared to me in my research of the place. One of the stories revolves around a certain plane crash that happened in the island, in one of the islands in the Azores, which is the archipelago. And the other story revolves around mysterious cargo that washed up on the shore of one of the islands of the Azores. And both stories had elements that I could recognize. And I made that an emphasis. I said, if you start to fall in love with something or grow interest with something that is unfamiliar territory to you, don't let that make you believe that it isn't going to be yours. And it's not your business being curious about it, because it is. Even though I've never visited the Azores, the archipelago of the Azores, researching how it came about this place helped me realize that everything is connected and that the internet's amazing. Where is Rabo de Peixe? Let's get into it. Let's go. Let's get on the plane right now. Y'all on the plane with me? We're on the plane. We're on the same plane. We're on board. All right, let's go. Where and what is Rabo de Peixe, Valerie? Well, like I said, Rabo de Peixe is a village in the island of São Miguel in the archipelago of the Azores. And if you're wondering where's the Azores? Where is the Azores? I was with you. The Azores is a group of 9 islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. These islands are called Corvo, Flores, Faial, Pico, São Jorge, São Georgie, sorry, Graciosa, Terceira, Santa Maria, and San Miguel, which is the island in which the village of Rabo de Peixe is located. San Miguel forms part of the eastern island group of the Azores, and it is the largest island there. And the Azores are located halfway between North America and Europe. They are Portuguese islands, and if you don't have a clue where this is, that's what everyone was saying in the research I was doing. On the YouTube videos I would watch, all the vloggers, all the YouTubers are like, I didn't know about this place until I landed here. I'm like, okay, well, I'm with you. And I was pissed. I was like, why haven't I known about this place? Why wasn't I aware of this place? But I think there's a reason. And obviously it's just something I came up with. But I think the Earth wants the archipelago of the Azores for itself, and I don't blame the Earth for it, because but I use the word beautiful, but the word beautiful is not even gonna come close to what it is. It's a place that I believe the Earth would conceal, because it's trying to protect it, because I'm telling you, it's like a fantasy. It's exactly what you'd imagine that a story, those fantasy stories, I wouldn't know exactly one, because the only fantasy that I've read or ever have come close to is Harry Potter. But whenever you imagine any utopian place in a fantasy novel, bam, this place. And they call the island of San Miguel the Green Island, and it makes sense. You know how some nicknames don't make sense? Some people are dubbed a certain way, and you're like, okay, that doesn't make sense. This makes sense. The island of San Miguel is nicknamed the Green Island. And when you first take a look at it, it feels as if nature hasn't been messed with as much as other places around the world, but it definitely has. Anywhere humans have landed, there has been some some messing, and there's been environmental damage, of course, but like all the other places, it has this abundance of green lush. It almost makes you forget the human impact in general. When they are volcanic islands, and you can already imagine, like, when you say volcanic islands, there's always some mysticism around that. It's mystical. It's the landscapes that come with that. You can conceptualize that it's uniquely made. It definitely is. When I speak about the archipelago of the Azores and the island of San Miguel, there is a type of elephant in the room when you look at it. And that elephant, that big thing that I notice every time I look at the island of San Miguel, is the contrast of the Atlantic Ocean in the verdant shades of the forest, the mountains, the prairies, and the agricultural fields in general. There is this immense contrast of colors. There are quadrants on quadrants of fertile fields that are set. They're set for agriculture, and it becomes kind of like what I'd call the face ID of the place. The recognizable feature of the island, which is that green, because everyone calls it the green lush. Everyone's like, the green luscious island. Yeah, San Miguel in the Azores is a green luscious island. And yeah, it's its face ID, I guess. You just wish you could grab the island with your hands, and it would be like an energy bar. Like, it would give you energy. It's like a salad of greens. The island is like a salad of greens, and with an electric blue ocean on the side as a drink. That's my attempt. All right, I'm trying to make you envision this place, and I'm really trying. It's incredible. And there's caves, waterfalls, volcanoes, volcanic islands, mountains. The scenery overall is a clash and a contrast of healthy colors that are pleasing to my eyes and also to the eyes of a bunch of people, because literally you'll go on YouTube, look up the Azores. Everyone's like, oh, how is this not famous? How is this not famous? I don't know. I hope I make this give this some recognition. Rabo de Peixe, the village in the island of San Miguel in the Azores. I'm gonna tell you what that looks like. It's a lot of there's something that really stands out about Rabo de Peixe, and in particular, it's like the colorful homes. Because here in Texas where I live, there's very uniform living. Like everything is kind of made by not the same company, but like, you know what I mean. There's all kind of like uniform looking stuff, and over there, there's colorful houses, red, yellow, pink, with terracotta roofs. Oof, terracotta roofs. I really like those roofs. They're like kind of like the orangey color, kind of like the clay colored ones. And to me, it seems as if the walls of these homes communicate with the ocean in sight. They're surrounded by cliffs, and there's narrow streets, while going upward from the coast. The economic activity, the main economic activities of the Azores, of the archipelago in general, and of San Miguel, the main economic activities are agriculture, fishing, and tourism. And it makes sense. It makes sense because its main point of interest is its nature, and that's what stands out so clearly. But even though tourism is a big part of the economy, it's not well known as other islands around the globe. And even with that, most Azoreans, I love that name, Azorean, so beautiful. Every time I hear a beautiful name, I'm like, I'm gonna call my kid that. I don't have a kid. I'm saying, like, if I ever have one, I like the idea of Azor as a name. Yeah, maybe. Well, most Azoreans have some family member that lives in the U.S. That's what I heard. There's not a lot of tourists, but it still thrives off of tourists. And I have my own little scenario. You already know that I make movies in my head, okay? If I learn from documentaries, and you will see that. But I've imagined myself pulling up to the island of San Miguel, and me arriving to the island would be like in a ship, and it reminds me of that song in Pirates of the Caribbean. That song, it's called Drink Up. I think Drink Up Me Hearties Yo-Ho. Yeah, that's what it's called. And it's from Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End by Hans Zimmer. Of course, Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer's gonna have a whole episode on its own in my podcast. He's gonna have his own thing. Don't worry about it, because you're gonna hear all about him. And I know if you don't know who that is, okay, you're gonna know. But if I ever think of an adventure or me stepping into a climatic moment in my life, it's this song by Hans Zimmer in Pirates of the Caribbean. It is a daydream of me. I have this daydream of me arriving at the shore of San Miguel, like Jack Sparrow, like the pirate in the movie. Standing at the very tip of the boat. You know what? Pause this right now. Pause this episode right now. Go on YouTube. Go on Hans Zimmer of his official YouTube channel, and search up the title of the song, Drink Up Me Hearties Yo-Ho, and play it right at minute 2:59. That's exactly when I envision myself pulling up in the same, having this feeling of finding gold in a treasure chest, as if I've arrived at the circumstances where my dreams are taking flight. And in that moment, all I can do is admire the view of San Miguel. That's what it reminds me of. Pause it, go listen to it, and that's what the Azores in itself would sound like if I was arriving to it. I was very curious about how the people, I'm always very curious about how people act in general. I always have to kind of ask the questions, ask the whys. Like, I want to see what people are about in certain places in general, everybody. And I wanted to, you know, I wanted to understand the people of San Miguel and how they act. But overall, I can't ever simplify how one acts, but even if one is from the Azores, each island has its own personality. In and I read and saw a lot of videos that explained an essential character of the Azoreans. From it was accounts from Azoreans themselves and tourists. And what I summed up was there's a distinction made from the people of mainland Portugal and the Azoreans. And the Azoreans, since the Azores is more rural than mainland Portugal, Azoreans tend to be more humble and warm. And there was a video that was saying that a lot of, it's, you gotta remember, like, this place has tourism. So people were saying that, I think it was a tourist that was interviewing an Azorean, and he was saying, the Azorean people, they're happy because they're surrounded by nature. They're happy, they're surrounded by nature. There's low levels of stress because of that. But I can see that. Of course, I can see that. I can see that. Of course, there might be a lot of people that find themselves at a good mental, at a positive mental health state because of nature. But the more I study the world, the more I realize that some people conceive and reside in their own living hell sometimes, regardless of what paradise they find themselves in. So, in order to not oversimplify something that I know can be contradicted, and that was one of the things, was, yeah, there is low levels of stress because of nature, but you never know what someone's going through, especially in your own world. It's a whole thing that you may not even share. But I think there's an obsession with the element of water. And it ties back, it ties to the how nature can improve and lower stress. And my obsession with water, if you have a fixation with water, growing up or something, or in general you still do, I've always found ways and searched for ways that I could get closer to the beach. I've always wanted to be closer to the beach since I did not live at the beach. I always thought people had an idea of what element moved them, or what environment moved them. Like, what moves you, the forest, the desert, the prairies, what moves you? And I always had that question. I would always ask people that. And most of the time, I was left empty handed while asking those questions, because I don't know, people don't really have, it's weird, a lot of people that I've talked to don't really have like an ideal environment. But I feel like I always had like a thing for blue spots, for bodies of water. And water calms, water heals. It's an escape from a hectic life. The closer you get to it, I feel, I think the closer you get to water, the more calm and soothing the atmosphere becomes. A shore in the sea, in the ocean, can be constant at times if you think about it. I think unpredictability, of course, can happen at sea, and I think it can be a big fear and trigger for many people. And I find the waves not only soothing, but at times mostly predictable. And I can see how, like, the Azores, in places that are, island life in general is like that, because, there's lower stress levels, happier and healthier. I wouldn't say for all, but I think the water could promote that. Humans have a love for water. We recreate water all the time. Overall, the majority of people prefer blue spots than green spots. And I was shocked to know that. But it's true, overall, a majority of people prefer blue spots, which is bodies of water. And that is kind of shocking. But I'm telling you, the Azores has both green spots and blue spots. You want to pick one? You can. You have a choice here. You can, but you'll see both. And also the Azoreans are also described as social people. I believe that. I actually, Rabo de Peixe, I think I saw a lot of social people in videos and I really liked it. I really wanted to spark a conversation with these people, but it was that brings me to really want to emphasize why I am about to speak about Rabo de Peixe. Most of the articles that I found in English and in Portuguese online were based on the social and economic issues that are present in Rabo de Peixe. They're extremely important. And they need attention because these are hardworking people. The people of Rabo de Peixe are hardworking people that deserve to have their skill sets admired and shown. But they get somewhat of a bad reputation in the media. And that's what I saw in my research, and I really had to dig deep to show the sides of Rabo de Peixe that I love. There are many. They are many. And that's what I'm doing in this episode. To embrace a certain uniqueness, the comfort, the familiarity that Rabo de Peixe provides me through my research of it, that provided me through my research. Because I know sometimes, I know some residents, they love their home. They love Rabo de Peixe. They love their families, even through the struggles. And I'm here to convey that love in the ways that I've seen it, even through a screen. There's a lot that one can decipher in a way. My first source of information on Rabo de Peixe came through a documentary. Through a documentary called Fishtail by Joaquim Pinto and Nino Leonel. I really like this documentary and I really recommend it. Because if a documentary is good to me, is because it shows authenticity of a place. It shows a true demonstration of life in its intimate moments and ranges of emotion. I make sure that a documentary's production doesn't control the story, but instead the story takes care of the production. And this documentary was exactly that. And it made me fall in love. I'm telling you, they're responsible for my love interest towards the Azores in the Rabo de Peixe. Rabo de Peixe depends heavily on fishing. And it has been this way for 400 years. It is the largest community for small-scale fishing in the Azores. It holds the largest fishing port there. And I'm going to talk to you about that because I have something cool about it. I have something really cool because, Google Earth shows me. Google Earth shows me and I must deliver it. It's a really cool, I actually really like, the color of the ocean there is so nice. It's like like the blue gusher, the candy. It's so nice. And many fishermen in Rabo de Peixe, they leave and migrate to obtain another life other than fishing. And it's important to know. This is important to know because a lot of the fishermen there are making less money than ever before. Especially because there's less fish in the water due to the overfishing from large-scale commercial fisheries. The large-scale commercial fishing companies, they're taking the fish that the fishermen of Rabo de Peixe need to make a living. It is financially difficult to be a fisherman there. Fishermen are often the ones feeding whole families. They go out every day to find catch. And most of these fishermen come back with almost no pay because of the fish that have, there used to be more and now there's less, and it doesn't hold up anymore. Most of the fishermen, or some, not most, but some of them, they've dropped out of school to fish. Being entrepreneurial in this way, by being a fisherman there, is extremely crucial for financial reasons in Rabo de Peixe. There's a lot of boats. There's a lot of people that fish there. There's a lot of boats at the dock. There's a lot of people who are in the small scale fishing industry in Rabo de Peixe. But the natural resources, which are fish, have become scarce in the area. Here's the thing about Rabo de Peixe. Here's the thing. It is described as one of the poorest zones of São Miguel, of the island of São Miguel, where government benefits and aid is a reality for some of its residents. It's said that on the outskirts of Rabo de Peixe, on the outskirts, out of the village, there's the rich have their mansions, and that there's a dramatic contrast from that scenario in such a little distance. But I also found that some other people contradicted it, and they said the other opinion said that the dynamic can vary. That dynamic can vary because not everything in Rabo de Peixe revolves around fishing, and because agriculture as well, but fishing is a big part of it. And the middle class and the upper classes eventually blend in certain parts of the village. Rabo de Peixe is like a classroom run by the underdog. To me, I'm always learning from everything. There's a lot to learn from Rabo de Peixe, a lot, and from any location. But I'm telling you, this place is deep. This place is like the ocean. This place is deep, and you want to take a look at it because to me, it's like looking at Rabo de Peixe is like learning the value of work and the immense freedom one can gain from making their own living, regardless of other circumstances. But there's this quote that I really liked, and that it reminded me of this place when I was doing the research, and it is by John Buchan. I think it's Buchan, Buchan, and it says the charm of fishing is that it is the pursuit of what is elusive but attainable, a perpetual series of occasions for hope. I really like that because I find charm in the village of Rabo de Peixe because the fact that small scale fishing exists in the ways that it's done in Rabo de Peixe is extremely admirable. They don't always have the fishing tools, the most modern fishing tools, but they still go out at sea with large crews of people, relying on a few resources to get the job done at times. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of patience. In the documentary Fishtail, it's called Fishtail, by the way, the documentary Fishtail that I mentioned you, they mentioned this concept I just spoke of, how fishing there is regarded as doing the job of a free person. Since, being a fisherman on your own, you can determine your wages and hours. I find so much courage in that. I find so much courage in choosing any sort of freedom-based career. And I think the way they live their life is an art. It's a true demonstration of the human spirit and its unique relation to its environment in which they live off of. And that's incredibly admirable. And I actually had I noticed that a lot of my attachment to this place was, it has to do with also me being an immigrant. There's kind of an understanding, an interconnection that I think immigrants can relate to, in the essence of Rabo de Peixe. How your own hard work gets you the things that you have. Building something of yours from the very core is what I believe is the attitude of the people of the Azores, mostly in Rabo de Peixe, and what it's mainly about. It's productive. I think it's a productive. I think a lot of these people are productive in the fishing industry there, in the small scale fishing. They power through. And the videos, the videos, the videos. Let's please talk about these videos. The videos. Like, whenever I like something, I kind of just want to, whenever you stare at something that you really love, and you kind of stare at it in awe. I'm doing that, but in my brain. But it would kind of like, it makes me go a little bit. I look like as if I'm like in a trance. Maybe I am, but I think I'm like admiring. I'm in awe of what's going on in my brain right now, because I'm remembering these videos of Rabo de Peixe that depict the character of Rabo de Peixe extremely well. And I wouldn't know exactly because I haven't gone, but it's like, the videos have, there's more than one video. There's a lot of videos actually in this YouTube channel called Vista de São Miguel Azores. And as I'm doing this research, there's multiple videos that depict the character of the place. You can see how the people of Rabo de Peixe are, and in general in the Azores. The more I started watching, the more I got attached. Simply the way they act is so fun. Like, they're mostly fishing in the videos. They're also like on land and they're doing other things, but when they're fishing, you can see them joking among themselves. They're joking among themselves, and there's a lot of fishing going on. And it's like someone's documenting this. This is like one of the main economic activities of Rabo de Peixe, and someone's documenting this on Vista de São Miguel Azores. Check it out. Someone's really documenting this, and it's crazy because you see there's so much. I've never fished before, but I see I see there's elements of serenity. So elements of serenity. There's got to be patience, and I'm always kind of like on the go. Always on the go. And seeing that contrast, because I'm speaking about contrast here, and that contrast is beautiful, because it's like, that's why I'm so drawn to it. There's you see them all together in their fishing, and they're cracking jokes among another, and the way that they talk, the way that people talk. They say that in São Miguel, people speak differently from mainland Portugal, and especially in Rabo de Peixe, they speak differently because it has French influence in its tone and its dialect. And other people in Portugal, I kept looking at the comments of the videos, and people in Portugal were like saying, "Oh, I'm from mainland and I don't understand anything," and I'm like, "Oh well, that's dope," because I love the way they speak with passion. I'm glad they have the dialect. I'm glad Rabo de Peixe has that tone to their, in that way of speaking, because it's, they talk with passion. They talk with their hands. I like that. When you talk with your hands, that's like your body. That's your whole body trying to trying to talk to. It's trying to talk to, and then just wondering. I wish there was like your words, when words came out of our mouths, there was like actual words like letters, and you could just throw them at people so they can see what we're talking about as well as hear it. And one of the main characters of this channel of Vista São Miguel, one of the main characters, his name is, I put him as a main character because it's actually like it's like a documentary too. It's they're YouTube videos, but it's somebody's life. Like, it's an actual life, and I'm over here thinking of it as characters. But one of the cousin of the owner of the YouTube channel Visa San Miguel Azores. His cousin's name is Gogo. And that's what he says. He puts Gogo on there. He says Gogo's back or something. And he puts, it's in Portuguese, and I'm trying my best. I try to translate back and forth, but one of his cousins, he's featured in a lot of the videos. And he's one of the ones that I grew an attachment for, because Gogo, I couldn't really understand much of what he was saying until today, actually, because someone posted in the comments what he was saying in one of his most popular videos. Was Gogo speaking, and he talks about the difficulties of being a fisherman in Rabo de Peixe. The way he expresses himself, the way that he conveys meaning to everything that he was saying in that video. There was people around him, and in other videos there's also other people, but you could see in their faces that they're like, okay, this is his thing. He talks, but there's so much passion that I wish I understood Portuguese, but I kind of could, not technically understand the language in itself, but through his emotions in that video, it's as if his words, the tone in itself was translating to English. Because I think sometimes people can be so passionate, people can be so incredibly passionate about something that if you don't even know language, you can feel the emotion raging inside of them. And he speaks about those struggles, and the way he speaks, there's so much importance to those issues of being a fisherman there. There's so much importance, and you could tell that it's something that he does almost every day, if not every day. I wouldn't know, but I know this is it's his job. And that's a beauty of YouTube. That's a beauty of anything, any search engines, because it's like I saw a bit of his world in that speech. And that's what makes me really understand interconnections, because I can make sense of what he's saying, because I can relate it to some of the things I've felt in my life. Obviously not the same at all. He feels things on a different level and has different things going on than what I've been through. But as the interconnection of humans, we can understand each other in some way. And this is why I really believe that this episode was important in interconnection. And, it's really cool because the guy who owns the YouTube channel, he has a drone. I really like drones. I think my sister's boyfriend asked my sister to the homecoming dance in high school with a drone. And that was the first time I ever saw a drone. And I wanted to I wanted to stop it mid-flight and just kind of swing it around the trees to see if it would, I don't know, technology, everything the drone does, in the videos that he makes of San Miguel, he conveys in the images, you can see the island, and that's where I've seen most of it is from his videos. And I see slow living. There's a lot of slow living involved in that place. And I find myself attracted, very, very attracted to slow living, because it's kind of the opposite. It's the opposite of what I live. I don't live slow. And I know a lot of people in the United States don't live slow. It depends on the culture. The Rabo de Peixe, the Azores, their collectivist culture, and that they place an emphasis on the we. And then you could tell because when they work together as fishermen too, there's an emphasis in that we instead of the I that I'm usually so used to because of the culture that I'm in is individualistic. Because I feel that slow living has a lot to do with collectivist culture, because I feel that there is not really a hurry to live fast. Rabo de Peixe has more peace in that way. I saw more peace through his videos, because way more than I have ever experienced and seen in other places. And I see that more in collectivist cultures. as if there's time for realization. They make an emphasis on it. And there's this part, there's this area in Rabo de Peixe. It's in the dock of Rabo de Peixe. And I've seen this in the documentary Fish Jail, and I saw this as well in the YouTube channel that I just spoke of. I see this as kind of like one of the activities to do there that the locals know about and that they engage in. In the dock of Rabo de Peixe, in the dock, they jump off the wall of the dock. There's a dock there, where the boats are docked, and there's kids in the videos in the YouTube channel, and in the documentary there's kids and anybody and children, I think there was adults, jump off the wall of the dock, and they're like doing really cool backflips, and they're showing all their water tricks and everything, and like it reminds me of my childhood. It reminds me of this place called Club Puerto Azul. It was a beach club called Puerto Azul in Venezuela, and looking at the videos of Rabo de Peixe gives me major FOMO. I want to be there. I want to be there because in the moment that you're making an activity, that you're having fun through what is given to you, which is the ocean. At that moment, it's evident that they don't take what is around them for granted in that way, since most of them use their surroundings for play and work, and that's truly, I think, what I admire as well. Using your surroundings for play and work, and like I feel like here there's I'm surrounded by a lot of more there's not much exposure to nature. It's more buildings and such, and I'm getting FOMO. I'm getting major FOMO. I see them jumping off the dock, and in that club I'm speaking of, the beach club, when I was younger, it had the same aspect in Venezuela. It's in Venezuela, and I just remember that you could make a show out of it, because it's like at the beach, like I feel like you could always do something. There's always something going on, even if it's like the chillest activity. There's fun in that. Maybe it's just me because I live fast, and maybe I'm a big fan of slow living, but I think a lot of people in the United States find that attractive, slow living, because things are fast here. And who doesn't like variety? Who doesn't wanna change it up? And I've taken my time, and you've noticed. I've taken my time, and you have noticed. And if you haven't noticed, well, wow, that's incredible that you haven't noticed that I haven't talked about those two peculiar stories. And I promised that I would speak of them. And those peculiar stories, what was actually the beginning stories that called me towards San Miguel and Rabo de Peixe in the initial research process. Just one Google search, research, and I see things like questions like, what is up with Rabo de Peixe? What's going on with Rabo de Peixe? What's the deal? And I was like, what does that even mean? People were asking that on the internet. They were asking, what is the deal with Rabo de Peixe? What's up with it? And I'm like, what do you mean? And like, obviously that sounds really intriguing. Like, what do you mean, what's up with it? What are you talking about? Like, what do you mean, what's up with the place? Like, what? A lot of people were asking that on the search engines that I was going on. And I click on their question, and I'm like, okay, why are they asking this? And then I see a link to a story. And somebody answered to like, what is up with Rabo de Peixe? They pretty much linked this story as a comment to it. And I was like, okay. And then I noticed that about a year ago, I came across that link, which was an article called Blow Up: How half a ton of cocaine transformed the life of an island. And it was written by Matthew Bremner. and it was an article from The Guardian. And I actually had come across this article and Rabo de Peixe about a year ago now I think about it. And it was about on June 6, 2001. This is what the article was about and what happened. On June 6, 2001, a man transporting half a ton of uncut cocaine from Venezuela to a gang in Spain. He was transporting cocaine on a boat from Venezuela to a gang in Spain. And the rudder of the boat got damaged. So the guy got near Pilar de Bretaña, which is a town in the island of San Miguel, and he submerged the cocaine in a cave under nets and chains. And he submerged the cocaine, he submerged the contraband with the weight of an anchor and of nets and chains. And so pretty much we had a guy transporting uncut cocaine, half a ton of it, from Venezuela. And he was going to Spain, and his boat got messed up, and he had to stop in the Azores, in the island of San Miguel. Had to do a pit stop, or he wouldn't be able to continue, right, to go all the way to Spain. So what happened was, after he submerged, because in order for him to be able to pull up into a dock, he had to unload the contraband. And so he submerged the cocaine in a cave near Pilar de Bretaña, and the contraband actually started rising to the shore from the force of the natural elements. And the man headed to Rabo de Peixe with the boat unloaded. So he pretty much headed to Rabo de Peixe with his boat without any cocaine, because he had put it in a cave near Pilar de Bretaña. And people on the shores of Pilar de Bretaña started finding packages of the uncut cocaine on the shore. And some of them reported it to the authorities and some did not. Some of the people on the island actually that got a hold of the cocaine, which were either the fishermen or other locals, they began to sell it. And a lot of people people in San Miguel got involved in selling the cocaine across the island of San Miguel. And the cocaine that was found near Pilar de Bretaña, it hit the island pretty hard. People became addicts as well as dealers of the amount that showed up from that day. People from San Miguel even would go to Rabo de Peixe to buy drugs. People were ending up in the hospitals from heart attack-like symptoms from the cocaine and other complications that were brought from the cocaine. And the island and people there are still living with the effects of that event today. And that was actually the first story that I came across regarding San Miguel and the Azores and Rabo de Peixe. And I was like, oh, what is that? What kind of... that was a really interesting story. It really was. But it mentioned Venezuela, and I'm from Venezuela. And, that's a little, small, tiny interconnection, but, it's something that I'm familiar with. And I was like, okay, and honestly, I'm not really used to anything or anyone or Venezuela being mentioned as much. So whenever I see them, I'm like, yeah. But then obviously this was not a very positive story. So then I was like, okay, well, but, it is what it is, and it's journalism, and, it was a good article. And so I was like, okay, well, wow, I think it's a fascinating story. It's terrible what happened and the effects of it. I'm going to tell my dad about it. And because I like that journalism type of accounts, I appreciate it. And so I go up to my dad, and I go up to him, and I'm like, hey, can I tell you something? Can I tell you about this place? It's a really cool place. And I just read a crazy story about it. It has Venezuela's involved. But this place is actually an island in the archipelago of the Azores. That's what I told my dad. I was like, yeah, that's what the place is. Have you heard of it? And he's like, yes, I've heard of it. And I'm like, no way. My eyes lit up. My everything lit up. My whole body, my soul, my spirit came out of me. And he obviously caught it. He was like, okay, yeah, I've heard of it. But actually, I heard of it because I knew somebody who passed away in an airplane crash on one of the islands in the Azores. And I was like, tell me more. I just came back from listening to a crazy story happened in one of the islands, and now I'm back for more. Tell me more, Dad. And he the airplane crash is called the tragedy of the Azores. La tragedia de las Azores. De los Azores. The tragedy of the Azores. On September 3rd, 1976, a choir in the Universidad Central de Venezuela, that's the university, one of the universities in Venezuela, a choir went on an airplane it was a military airplane that belonged to the Venezuelan Air Force, and they were on their way to the 12th World Choral Day celebration in Barcelona, Spain, when the plane crashed in the island of Terceira. The island Terceira of the Azores. And my dad knew one of the choir members that was on that military plane going to Barcelona, but unfortunately crashed on the way there on one of the islands, which is Terceira in the Azores. And I was shocked. I'm like, what? My dad knew the choir member because the choir member in that plane was his neighbor at a young age. I think when he was young, when he was very young, around maybe 13 years old, it was a woman who was his neighbor, and she rode that plane, and it crashed there. And I was like, talk about interconnection. I mean, it's another unfortunate event, but it's like an interconnection, and that's crazy because I'd never heard of this place before, but I'm hearing it in these stories, and there's a lot of interest now because my dad actually, it was a very big thing. It was a big event that happened. It was a very big tragedy, and for my dad to be the neighbor of that person and know about this place, it called out to me. Made me more curious. And he asked me, why are you so obsessed? Why are you so obsessed with this place? Why are you so obsessed with the Azores? Why are you so obsessed with the island of San Miguel, with Rabo de Peixe? I had to explain to him the same thing as I explained to you all. The Azores, Rabo de Peixe, San Miguel. Rabo de Peixe has something I didn't know that I was lacking, which was the emphasis of teamwork. And that's a lot of what happens in Rabo de Peixe, which is admirable. There's a widespread attitude among the fishermen there. The bonds between the people they emphasize the main human qualities that allow us to thrive in societies, which is hard work and togetherness, coming together in a unified perspective. And there's this very I'm an individualistic culture, and there's a lot of emphasis on the I, and I think that's admirable. And that was pretty much what you could say. I'm obsessed, but it's there is a lack of that bond in my everyday life that I don't see, and they have that. And the element of connection, my element of connection with Rabo de Peixe, comes from how many of the people of Rabo de Peixe are able to use the land as a main center point of their life. I've always been drawn to that. As simple as it sounds, a lot of people there do it every day. From working at sea, working with the land, agriculture, and everything beyond. It's all about that interconnection, that feeling as if there's something there for me, because there's aspects that I admire. And I don't feel disconnected between things anymore because of this place. I can always dig deeper or even find a common ground in something else. I think it's about understanding that where one exists is not far from anything, because there's commonalities in everything that may seem far from us. And I think when you realize that everything is part of a whole, things begin to feel less impossible and more doable. And that's what sums up my interconnection with this place. And it's okay. And it's okay to be curious and keep looking, because you will always find something. Thank you, everybody. I'll catch you on the next episode.